This is a station identification moment. You're listening to CPR Worldwide Media, a division of CPR Media Network, coming to you live right across the planet. Check out our website at www.cprworldwidemedia.com and our Facebook page at facebook.com/CPR Worldwide Media. This is CPR Media Network, coming to you live from the USA.
Well, looky here, a new listener. Hey, this ain't your little sister's radio station.
Why do cities shine so bright? It's the glow of opportunities, of ideas bouncing off one another, of countless people, every one of us, striving to succeed. Right now, in cities everywhere, ideas are being born. New thinking that will put us in awe of what people are capable of. That's what lights cities up. And helping people and their ideas to burn even brighter, so that communities, businesses, and you and I can grow. What if a bank made that its job? For more than 200 years, Citi's job has been to help empower people and business. Now, around the world, it's wherever people gather, wherever ideas come alive. It's wherever you are. The world's city.
It's not about how many miles you can get out of the C-Max hybrid. It's about how much life you can fit into it. The Ford C-Max hybrid, with an EPA estimated range of 540 miles on a tank of gas, and all the room you need to enjoy the trip. Go stretch out. Go further.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you.
His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here. You're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
Who is the Olympic athlete?
his faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day.
The moment you connect,
You're no longer in control.
what's this guy want? No plane, no statement.
We're facing a nuclear meltdown.
This is only the beginning. Black Hat, rated R.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by CitizensUnited.org.
Welcome to the State Legislators Roundtable. Your host will be Charles Kacprowicz, Executive Director of Citizen Initiatives and Countermand Amendment. Our special legislator guests will be discussing important issues in their states that relate to federal encroachment on states' rights. The nonpartisan Article 5 single-issue countermand amendment can remedy many states' issues peacefully without the consent of Congress, the courts, or the executive branch. We will reclaim our constitutional republic soon. The nonpartisan countermand amendment is the missing piece of the Article 5 puzzle. Our nation is coming apart at the seams. So, we are countermanding.
Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. Welcome to the State Legislators Roundtable. Roundtable discussions with state legislators and community leaders center around critical issues in the states as they relate to federal encroachment on states' rights and how the nonpartisan Countermand Amendment can remedy many of these issues safely and quickly. This is not a gotcha forum. We are not here to back our guests into a corner. We encourage serious discussions of issues important to our guests and their states. Subjects will include taxation, criminal law, energy policies, healthcare, social issues, federal land grants, court decisions, education, executive orders, unfunded liabilities, Environmental Protection Agency, Bureau of Land Management, Internal Revenue Service, and more.
You've been making a lot of noise about taking our guns away, but you might want to review history. 1835, Gonzales, Texas Territory. The authorities wanted to confiscate the big gun that protected that colony. You know what the people said? Come and take it. Because they were willing to fight for their freedom and their guns. So are we.
Come and take it if you want it. Come and take it if you can. Come and take it, but I warn you, you'll have to pry it from my cold dead hands. We want the freedom that God gave us, so you best not cross that line. If you want this gun, you gotta come through us and take it.
One shot at a time. Just like Gonzales, we're keeping our guns.
Kacprowicz. I am the Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. In this short video, you will learn how we can restore our constitutional republic, protecting states' rights, safely, quickly, and successfully. James Madison was an American statesman, political theorist, and the fourth President of the United States. He is hailed as the father of the Constitution for being instrumental in the drafting of the Constitution and as a key champion and author of the United States Bill of Rights. He served as a politician much of his adult life. Mr. Madison said the following: "The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. The former will be exercised principally on external objects as war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce. The powers reserved to the several states will extend to all the objects which, in the ordinary course of affairs, concern the lives, liberties, and properties of the people, and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state." State legislatures in 1787 created the federal government. The government did not create the legislatures. The legislatures reserved to themselves and future legislatures, in Article 5, the authority to amend the Constitution and modify the conduct of the federal government in order to preserve states' rights. It is absurd to argue that state legislatures must first get the federal government's permission before amending the Constitution. When the legislatures ratify any amendment, it is obligatory on the courts, Congress, executive branch, agencies, and financial institutions, including the Federal Reserve, to obey its provisions. Legislatures are the final arbiters in all constitutional matters. State legislatures can restore our constitutional republic safely with the single-issue Countermand Amendment, which includes pre-approved application by legislatures on Congress, pre-approved countermand text by the legislatures, and a pre-approved delegate resolution that binds delegates. Citizen Initiatives and its team have been the leading authority on the Article 5 amendment process, either through Congress or conventions, for 40 years. Citizen Initiative's mission: to help state legislatures preserve and safely apply their sovereign authority under Article 5 against encroachments by Congress or federal courts, the executive or non-government mandates, regulatory agencies, or delegates sent to a convention. Under Article 5, Congress is the facilitator of the amendment process and provides a manageable transition from applications to ratification. When Congress proposes amendments to the states, they do so as the deliberative body that writes and pre-approves the amendment before it is sent to the states. In the same way, state legislatures are the deliberative body and pre-approve proposed amendments before the convention convenes. State legislatures under Article 5 have sovereign deliberative authority over Congress and the Supreme Court, which assures that their collective will is obeyed by all branches of the federal government. Article 5 of the United States Constitution reads as follows: "The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states shall call a convention for proposing amendments which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress. State legislatures, having met their constitutional obligations when 34 state legislatures make applications on Congress, can convene a convention themselves if Congress causes unwarranted delays. State legislatures can safely amend the Constitution with single-issue amendment conventions, but they cannot arbitrarily rewrite the Constitution through delegates at the convention. Legislatures, as the deliberative body, pre-approve the text of all proposed amendments as well as delegate resolutions. State legislatures are the final arbiters in all constitutional matters through to ratification. With the single-issue Countermand Amendment, legislatures can address egregious wrongs suffered by their citizens. They can do so safely, quickly, and successfully. What is the National Strategy Committee? The committee will identify, select, and countermand laws and rulings that are burdensome to the states and their citizens. The committee is comprised of state legislators and citizens from each state. It includes a steering committee. Citizen initiatives will facilitate decisions of the National Strategy Committee in the 50 state legislatures. The National Strategy Committee avoids likely lawsuits against state legislatures claiming violations of Article 1, Section 10, which prohibits interstate compacts between the states without permission of Congress. What can states countermand? States can countermand and rescind laws and regulations that infringe on constitutional rights, enumerated rights, unenumerated rights in the 9th and 10th Amendments, federal land grabs, deficits, debt, taxation, Federal Reserve policies, and other non-government mandates, healthcare, energy, mining, local education, social issues, and more. Article 5 is a new beginning for our republic. Article 5 is simply for proposing amendments. It does not allow for a constitutional convention. Article 5 will not produce constitutional conventions. Article 5 does not allow the convening of a constitutional or open convention. This flawed constitutional argument has paralyzed state legislators for 30-plus years. Article 5 allows the convening of an amendment convention to propose amendments. The purpose of Article 5 is to protect the supremacy and perpetuity of the Constitution, and to protect our civil liberties and states' rights. This is the real genius of the founders and 1787 state legislatures. The simplicity of Article 5 was deliberate. Future legislatures would retain sovereign authority to decide how they should control the amendment process. The Constitutional Convention argument is based on an erroneous claim that the transition from the Articles of Confederation to the new Constitution was a usurpation of power by the delegates over the Articles. After the Annapolis Convention failed, Hamilton and Madison asked Congress to allow an open convention that would have the authority to amend the Articles without defining the limits of the convention. Congress and the legislatures agreed. The Articles did not allow the federal government to function effectively, which almost caused the loss of the Revolutionary War and the peace afterwards. Unanimous consent by the states was the biggest problem under the Articles. All 13 states wanted to retain their sovereign authority. There was no usurpation of power by the delegates. They did not force a transition to a constitutional convention. Legislature sovereignty trumps convention experience, historical experience, legal precedents, and federal mandates. State legislatures alone control the amendment process, from the application to ratification, not Congress, nor the courts, nor the executive branch. Legislatures don't need permission from the federal government to apply for and convene a convention, as long as the purpose is to propose amendments. Simultaneous, multiple, single-issue amendment conventions are allowed in Article 5. Article 5 delegates are not equivalent to the founders. They are ambassadors of their legislatures, not free agents. The founders, who were delegates, were commissioned to create a new constitution and a new government. Article 5 delegates are commissioned to only vote on an amendment pre-approved by their state legislature, thus leaving sovereignty in state legislatures, not delegates. The Article 5 single-issue Countermand Amendment will empower legislatures to address egregious wrongs suffered by the people in their states, safely remedy those wrongs one issue at a time when the federal government refuses to do so, give the states a powerful tool to peacefully counter federal encroachment on their states' rights, create effective ways to use the Countermand Amendment among the 50 states, and establish a workable balance of power between the states and federal government. Article 5 does not allow the states or delegates at a convention to write a new constitution. In order for the states to create a new constitution, they would have to secede from the Union, call for a convention, independent of Article 5, create a new constitution, and form a new government. Under Article 5, states already have sovereign authority to amend the Constitution to protect our liberties, so secession is not necessary. The Countermand Amendment empowers state legislatures to affirm and secure their sovereign authority peacefully, without changing our inalienable rights and protections in the Constitution. The thorniest problem at the 1787 Convention. 13 state legislatures created the Constitution and federal government. Their purpose was to form a federal government that would serve and protect the states, not for the federal government to rule over them. Their thorniest problem at the convention was resolving how the states would retain their sovereign nation-state independence. The solution was in Article 5. Under the Articles of Confederation, amendments to the Constitution required unanimous consent by the states. This nearly cost us the Revolutionary War. One state could hold the others hostage. Under Article 5, ratification requires only 3/4 of the states. Sovereignty remained in the hands of future state legislatures. State legislatures are the deliberative bodies. Under Article 5, state legislatures are the deliberative body, not delegates they send to a convention. State legislatures define their sovereign authority under Article 5 for themselves and future generations of legislators, and they must not abdicate it, not to Congress, not to the courts, not to the executive branch, not to the Federal Reserve or other private entities, not to regulatory agencies, not to delegates they send to an Article 5 convention. Most Article 5 groups will cause abdication of state sovereignty. Most Article 5 groups are ignoring critical constitutional matters that diminish, even cause abdication of state sovereignty. Their Article 5 process will make it impossible for future generations of legislators to retain their sovereign authority and prevent them from using Article 5 successfully in the future. Legal precedents will not guarantee that an Article 5 convention will be governed safely. Convention experience before the Constitutional Convention can't cause a convention to be conducted safely. Historical experience will not guarantee that deliberations at an Article 5 convention will be productive. Delegates to an Article 5 convention are not sovereign. There's no mention of delegates in Article 5. Only a delegate resolution, pre-approved by state legislatures, will assure a safe, quick, as short as 7 days, and successful Countermand Amendment Convention.
Check out our website at www.cprworldwidemedia.com and our Facebook page at facebook.com/cprworldwidemedia.
Over the next 40 years, the United States population is going to grow by over 90 million people, and almost all that growth is going to be in cities. What's the healthiest and best way for them to grow so that they really become cauldrons of prosperity and cities of opportunity? What we have found is that if that family is moved into safe, green, affordable housing, places that have access to great school systems, access to jobs, and multiple transportation modes, then the neighborhood begins to thrive and really, really take off. The oxygen of community redevelopment is financing. And all this rebuilding that happened could not have happened without organizations like Citi.
One of the things that we really try to do is to collaborate with people like Jonathan Rose, who are really like-minded and really can also provide innovative solutions to social issues.
And Citi has formed a partnership with our company so that we can take all the lessons from the revitalization of urban America to other cities. So we're now working in Chicago and in Washington, D.C., and Newark.
It's branching off of Jonathan's expertise and the fact that he has done so many wonderful affordable housing projects, new development and rehabilitation work. And so we were really seeing that there was a need for his skill in areas even outside of New York.
It's amazing how important safe, affordable housing is to the future of our society.
You meet new people, they want to know what you do. And when you tell them your job is to invest in things like low-income housing and schools and healthcare, they're shocked and they're so surprised that a job like this exists in finance. They always say that they had no idea, and then they want to know how they can get a job like that.
The design of the Ford Escape is clearly intended to grab your eye. Oh, and your foot. Huh, ain't that a kick? The Ford Escape with the foot-activated liftgate. Go open up something interesting. Go further.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you. His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here. You're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
who is the Olympic athlete?
His faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day. The moment you connect, you're no longer in control.
What's this guy want?
No claim, no statement.
We're facing a nuclear meltdown. This is only the beginning.
Black Hat, rated R.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by CitizensUnited.org.
We are working on them. We expect to finish the repairs, and I think for the rest of the evening we should be able to produce this show and to share some of the things that we feel need to be said. This is Charles Kacprowicz. I am the Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. We've had a very, very exciting week this week. I am on the road. I'm traveling. I am on a tour of 36 state capitals. I'm presently in North Dakota. I'm broadcasting from an RV that I'm traveling in, and we are working to meet with legislators in the state capitals, along with legislators one-on-one and in special committee groups. So we've had a tremendous time here in North Dakota. The fact is, in North Dakota, they have yesterday they had approved in committee, the government committee, which is the first step before it goes to a vote on the House floor, they had approved the Countermand Amendment as we proposed it. That's very important. Second, today they approved the Delegate Resolution as we proposed it, meaning that the delegates who are sent to the Countermand Amendment Convention will be bound to their state legislatures with the understanding that they are to follow the instructions in their Delegate Resolution so that they will properly organize the convention, meaning that every state will have one vote, because otherwise the more popular states are going to win. And second, that when they come to voting, they vote on just one amendment, and that's the pre-approved text of the Countermand Amendment. All of that is part of the Delegate Resolution direction. Now, why is that so critical? It's critical because under Article 5, when the states, that is 34 states, decide that they want to convene a convention through Congress, that they are able to do so as the sovereign agents, sending delegates as ambassadors rather than as free agents. We are the only group that has this kind of an understanding. And it's because up until us, every so-called constitutional scholar, and by the way, anyone who is an attorney can claim that title because they all need to interpret the law according to what the Constitution says. So they have to have some understanding of the Constitution, though few of them have any Article 5 understanding. But the fact is, they all interpret Article 5 to be equivalent to the Constitutional Convention. It is not. It says so right in the article. It says in the amendment. And that is, I take that back, in the Article 5. It says that it's for proposing amendments. It's not for open conventions, where they can discuss whatever they want. It's not for remaking the Constitution, which is what these other Article 5 groups are doing. And so when I was making my presentations in North Dakota, on a 3-day, over 3 days, I saw that many of these legislators had understood for the first time that they can control the delegates. They don't have to send them as free agents, as the other groups have been telling them. They can actually send them as ambassadors of their legislatures with specific instructions on what they are to do at the convention. So when 26 or more states have the same direction for their delegates, the convention is now safe, it's quick. I think it can be done in a week because they all have the same instruction and the same amendment to vote on. And third, it's going to be a safe and successful convention. So we're talking about a process that uses Article 5 for proposing amendments, not for creating a new constitution. Now, I don't know how these other groups ever came to understand that Article 5 is only for a constitutional convention. As a matter of fact, in committee today and yesterday, they without much instigation from me, other than the explanations that this is not a constitutional convention, but an amendment convention, the chairman and as well as others in the group, in the committee, there were, I think, 15 members in this committee, they struck the word constitutional convention and changed it to amendment convention. Why? Because if you use the term constitutional convention, you imply that it's to change the Constitution, and you imply that the delegates in an Article 5 convention are the same as the delegates in the Constitutional Convention in 1787. That's terribly misleading. If you start out with a wrong assumption, you of necessity always come to the wrong conclusion. And that's what they've done. The other Article 5 groups have not understood. Article 5 is to allow the states to exercise sovereign authority for proposing amendments. And that was given to the present legislatures by their forefathers who were in 1787. And it was for the purpose of making sure that future legislatures will have a process that will allow them to amend the Constitution when the federal government oversteps its bounds, and to do so safely. And so that's why they inserted proposing amendments in Article 5. But the sovereignty that the state legislatures had in 1787 is the same today. There's no other organization or group or individual in the country who has that sovereignty. Only state legislatures, not the delegates. And that's the problem with these other Article 5 groups. And I'm going to tell you this too, folks. The other Article 5 groups are having problems understanding how to sell their ideas. It doesn't matter how big they are. Their names, some of them are very popular. Some of them are very known. Some say that they are supposed to be the leading constitutional scholars in America. There are many, many different explanations or descriptions that they give to these guys. But however smart they are, however bright they are, they simply don't understand the purposes of Article 5. It's so that legislatures can amend the Constitution by proposing amendments and retaining the supremacy of the Constitution and making it a perpetual document into perpetuity. And so with those three ingredients, we have a safe Constitution, and we have a safe process that no one can stop if the legislatures understand it properly. So I've been struggling, trying to get these legislators to understand that even though I'm being criticized by these other groups, the COS people are attacking all the time, and the BVA people are proposing the same thing as far as delegates that the COS people are. And it is becoming difficult for me to be patient with them, but at the same time, they're still losing. Now, what are we doing? We've had incredible success. As I make this trip to 36 state capitals, meeting with these committees and with these legislators, we presently have, I think right now, 7 states that are filing, or in the process of filing, or getting it ready to present to their House and Senate, the Countermand Amendment and Delegate Resolution. We have at least 15, and I think we're probably over at least 16 right now, but I've been away for a while, so I cannot confirm that. But the fact is, these are states that are saying, we want to advance this in our state. These are legislators who are saying, we will sponsor this. I have one state that said, we're going to have 20 sponsors on this. Another one that has 12. Another one has perhaps another 20. And why? Because they see the value of the Countermand Amendment. Now, folks, I won't be able to say a great deal more about the amendment itself. I'll pick that up at the other side of the break. But just keep this in mind. The Countermand Amendment is the only legitimate, constitutionally legitimate way that we can protect our Constitution, restore our constitutional republic through state legislatures without getting bogged down in legalese, without getting bogged down in convention experience, so-called, before the Constitutional Convention, and also without getting bogged down in history. Everything that the other groups are advocating that says that these are the factors that will make a convention safe, all of that can accomplish nothing at a new Article 5 convention. You can't legislate an Article 5 convention in a way whereby past experience tells you what they ought to do. The sovereign states are actually creating this convention, and by doing so, they're sovereign. And sovereignty trumps all legalese. It trumps all convention experience. It trumps all of the historical elements that are used to defend why delegates need to be free agents. We don't need free agents at this Article 5 convention. We need ambassadors. We need to make certain that the legislatures retain their sovereign authority given to them by their 1787 counterparts. They must not abdicate. They must not surrender this. If they do, we will not be able to restore our constitutional republic, and we will be mired in politics like you've never dreamed. And this Article 5 process was never intended for that. Congress ought never be involved. Delegates must never tell the legislatures what to do. Even the Supreme Court has to listen to mandates that come out of a convention once the amendment is ratified. So the states alone control the future of our country. Now, folks, we're going to have to go to break. I want you to stay with us. We'll be back at the other side. I want to talk about a few more things. We also, I believe, will have a senator from up in Alaska, Dunleavy, and we're going to look forward to that conversation as well. So stay with us now.
Check out our website at www.cprworldwidemedia.com and our Facebook page at facebook.com/CPR Worldwide Media.
Every Friday morning, they send me out to get the goods. But what they don't know is that I'm using my city thank you card at the coffee shop. So I get 2 times the points. And those points add up fast. So sure, make me the grunt, because I'll be using those points to help me get to a beach in Miami. And all the big shots will be stuck here at the Cube Farm.
The City Thank You Preferred Card. Now earn 2 times the points on dining out and entertainment with no annual fee. To apply, go to city.com/thankyoucards.
The most amazing thing about the Ford Fusion isn't the way it looks. The most amazing thing is the way it sees. With blind spot technology, a lane keeping system, and a standard rear view camera, the Fusion is ready for whatever comes your way. Go prepared. Go further.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you. His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here. We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
Who is the Olympic athlete?
his faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day. The moment you connect, you're no longer in control.
What does this guy want? No claim, no statement.
We're facing a nuclear meltdown. This is only the beginning.
Black Hat, rated R.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome back, folks. This has been a very frustrating evening because of the technical problems that we've had, but I think we've got them resolved now. So I wish to thank you for staying with us. I also wish to thank you for understanding the importance of the work that we're doing. We are growing. When we get these radio broadcasts properly, we have tremendous audience. We have much interest in the work that we are doing from the legislators around the country. And as a result, we're gaining some popularity with a lot of people in different states. I have finished the publication of my new book called Countermand Amendment, the missing piece in the Article 5 puzzle, I would suggest that you get a copy. The fact is, with this, you'll have a blueprint of what we're doing, how this whole process works. You'll be able to see step by step why we are working in the states as we are, why North Dakota today and yesterday had given their committee, their government committee gave approval to both our amendment and to our delegate resolution. Why did they do that? You'll understand that. Go to countermands.us. We'll send you an autographed copy of the Countermand book. You'll put it in your library. I think you're going to cherish it. And at the same time, you can also order copies on Amazon. It is on Amazon. It'll be in bookstores shortly, and it'll be in other distribution channels. But to get an autographed copy, you have to go to countermands.us, and we will send that off to you ASAP. Now, I think that our guest from Alaska has joined us. Senator Dunleavy, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Boy, I'm so glad. Senator, we've had a lot of trouble here in the first hour with some technical issues, but I'm glad that we finally got you in. Now, Mike, do me a favor, and Senator Dunleavy, introduce your friend up there in Alaska, Senator Dunleavy, and give us a little history on him.
Yeah, Mike Dunleavy is one of many of our rock star legislators that we have here in the Mat-Su Valley. Just so the listeners understand, the Mat-Su Valley, we are so big that we are the size of the state of West Virginia. So we have 3 senators and 5 representatives just for our borough, which is what you all call down there counties. Mike is in this is your second term, right, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, and he's chair of the Education Committee. He's on the Finance Committee, and he's got
transportation. And transportation.
And transportation.
Well, in a state like Alaska, you need somebody in charge of transportation. I mean, how are you going to get around if you don't have somebody in charge of transportation? At any rate, Senator, this is Charles Kacprowicz. I'm just having a little fun with you. I really do appreciate you coming on board on this call, but I also appreciate the work that you're doing up there in Alaska for us. I'm going to have you and Mike discuss this in more detail shortly. I do have to go on another call. I'm on a broadcast on another station in just a few minutes. So I'm going to have to leave this with Mike and Sandy and Kelly. But at the same time, I want you to know that North Dakota has joined with you in both having the committee approve, their government committee approve the amendment as written, and also the delegate resolution as proposed. And so we have many other states that are doing the same thing. But we're not there yet at 34 for the application, and nor are we there yet for 26 for the delegate resolution, but we're getting there. And I am much impressed with the interest that we're getting from the legislators all over the country. And I am on a tour right now. I'm visiting 36 state capitals. I'm in North Dakota right now. I'm in South Dakota on Monday. The fact is that the legislators are really saying, hey, there's something about this Countermand Amendment that we need. We want to restore our constitutional republic, and we want to have some control over this overreach by the federal government. So I am personally very grateful to you, sir, for the work you're doing up there, for the help you've given Mike. And I want you to know we're winning. This actually is winning across the country. So I give you the credit for it.
Well, I give you the credit, and I give Mike Coons the credit. You guys are the ones that brought this to our attention, and sure, we can bring it to a vote, but without you guys working on it, it may have stayed in the back burner for some.
And that, of course, is true. Now, Mike, I'm going to ask you to come on board now and just kind of lead the way. Senator Dunleavy, I hope to meet you. Alaska is not one of the states I'm going to visit here this trip. Of course, we didn't really have to because you guys have already worked through this. But at any rate, I don't have the time to travel up there either because I'm in an RV. I'm actually broadcasting from an RV. So we are, improvising, you might say, as we're moving across the country. But again, I thank you. I I guess I have to say this before I get off this line. I have met some of the finest men and women in this country. These, oftentimes we hear disparaging comments about our legislators. Oh, they're political. Oh, they're biased. Oh, I'm telling you, I met statesmen. You're one of them. I met men and women who really know the importance of trying to find ways to protect this Constitution and states' rights. That, to me, has been the greatest experience and the greatest joy I've had, making so many, many friends, including recently just up here in North Dakota. So I'm going to thank you one more time and look forward to meeting with you. And I'm going to ask Mike to now take over and lead the way.
Yeah, thank you.
So Mike, so what is the latest that you can tell us about what we're doing up here in Alaska? I know that I got a call last night that this is going to be hitting the floor of the House and the Senate come Monday. So can you kind of talk to us about the strategy a little bit about how Alaska's doing this and hopefully leading the way?
Yeah, I'll do my best. And you have to forgive me. I'm recovering from what they described as a flu, bronchitis, and some little pneumonia here. But so we have Shelley Hughes out of the House, and we have Bill Stoltz, who's a senator out of the Senate, leading the charge on filing at the same time the Countermand Amendment protocols that we need to get this going for Alaska. I will be co-sponsoring with Bill Stoltz in the Senate, and I believe Shelley's got a couple co-sponsors in the House. So we'll introduce these in both bodies at the same time. We're anticipating that we shouldn't have much of a problem getting the votes, and we hope to get this through probably be 2 committees of referrals. We hope to get this taken care of here within the next couple of weeks at the latest. So that's where we are as of today. Mike, if you want to add anything to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, and that's really, from especially an Alaskan standpoint, that's really great news. I think what the audience doesn't understand, and a lot of people probably haven't seen it on the news, because the lower 48 doesn't really get told much about Alaska. Could you talk a little bit about how the latest theft of the state of Alaska or the attempted theft of the state of Alaska by President Obama is what's going on with that, and of course how the Countermand Amendment and this proposal, I think, is going to fly through, because we got even our more ardent Democrats are furious. So if you kind of help the audience understand the frustration level up here with the land grab that just occurred.
Sure. So it's become abundantly clear to many of us that the only way we're going to get out of this mess is that the states lead us out of this mess. A lot of us feel that the federal government is at best impotent and at worst oftentimes an enemy of the states, especially enemies of states like Alaska. Now, although Alaska is the largest state in the country in terms of land mass, coastline, et cetera, it's one of the smaller states when it comes to population. As a result, we get 2 senators like all states, but we only have 1 congressman. As a result, our voice oftentimes gets diluted within that Congress, and special interest groups that have never been to Alaska, NGOs, environmentalists, tree huggers, et cetera, whatever you want to call them, that have gone from being conservatives to preservationists. They've got the ear of this president. The problem with not just this president, but future presidents, whether they're Democrat or Republican, and once again, this is where the Countermand Amendment comes in. It's crucial, and it couldn't come at a better time. In 1906, under Teddy Roosevelt, who was a Republican, but was also known as a progressive, the Antiquities Act was passed. It was introduced by a congressman from Iowa, and it was passed and signed by Teddy Roosevelt. The original intent of the Antiquities Act was to protect Chaco Canyon in New Mexico from those that were pilfering Indian artifacts. That was the original intent. Unbeknownst to Congress at the time, they gave the president proclamation authority to claim basically any land that the president deemed fit to put under the Antiquities Act and take it out of the hands of the states and preserve it. Well, as things would be with the federal government, this should come as no surprise to people on this teleconference. It became abused, so much so that in 1943 there was an amendment to the Antiquities Act because of what happened in Wyoming. And what was happening in Wyoming was they were going to put Jackson Hole, or they were actually putting Jackson Hole into Grand Teton Park against the wishes of folks in Wyoming. So there was an amendment made in 1943 for Wyoming, and then in 1980, I may be skipping one here, but 1980 in Anilka, which was under Carter's administration, he too used proclamation to withdraw millions of acres of land in Alaska, all over the state of Alaska, designate certain rivers scenic and wild, and put some land under the federal government and for study later. This included a place called ANWR, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and part of that whole process involved what was potentially going to be a pretty good find of oil on the North Slope. Because of what happened in 1980, Congress slightly amended the Antiquities Act one last time, and but it didn't totally take care of the issue of a government in D.C. getting more powerful at the expense of the state, and that's where this is key. The federal government in D.C. is getting more powerful at our expense. Now, little old Alaska, which doesn't have the population of the congressmen necessarily to fight the rest of the country over these takings. Most people, they want to protect the polar bear, they want to protect the caribou, et cetera, et cetera. They've really not had a discussion with the people up here in Alaska, and that's especially the native people in Alaska, in which many of these lands are being taken out of potential future use. And we don't have to go into too much history about how Native Americans were treated in this country. In many respects, their treatment hasn't changed all that much when it comes with the federal government taking lands that could be productive oil lands, mineral lands, etc., out of any potential future development. And so what's happening is when Alaska came in 1959 as a state, the federal government at the time was concerned that we would not have the means to take care of ourselves. In other words, we wouldn't have the ability to tax ourselves or to develop our resources. So they were pretty hesitant bringing Alaska in. They did so, but in that process, they constructed a constitution, or forced us to develop a constitution, which some refer to as a result of the owner states. The long story short is, we were promised under the Statehood Act certain lands in order for us to be able to take care of ourselves and not be dependent on the federal government. This relationship has been unbalanced for some time and is growing more so under this president because of powers ceded to him by Congress, powers that have not been checked by Congress and could not be checked by the states. That's again why the Countermand Amendment is crucial. There isn't a week that goes by in Alaska that there has been some federal overreach. For example, a week and a half ago, it was federal National Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, saying that Native Alaskans can put a subsistence fishing net across the Kenai River and can catch basically whatever they want to catch. Well, the Kenai River is home to the largest king salmon in the world. 98-pound king salmon was taken out of there many years ago. Well, these king salmon have been on the decline, and we're trying to find out why this particular run of king salmon is declining. And here the federal government turns around and says that people can go net king salmon out of there now. Just a couple months ago on our own state land, the Pebble Prospect, which would be one of the largest gold and copper mines in the world, it developed and could bring in billions of dollars to the state of Alaska through the EPA. They basically put the kibosh on that project, and that's on state land. Now the list goes on and on and on and on, from restrictions in the Tongass National Forest to navigation of our navigable waters that under Statehood Act belong to Alaska. The list goes on. So if anyone is getting beat up daily by the federal government over these unconstitutional and unauthorized land grabs, it's Alaska on a daily basis. So I think you're going to find no state that's going to want to get this Countermand Amendment process passed more so than the state of Alaska. And we look forward to joining with other states because basically we're the canary in the mine. They can push you around if they can. They can take advantage of a smaller state in terms of population. And they can manipulate public opinion as to why they should be able to take land. And nonetheless, it's unconstitutional. It's not part of our statehood compact. And quite frankly, Alaska's not going to take it anymore.
You couldn't say it any better. I couldn't say it any better. It's for the audience to understand what the Countermand Amendment can do to help Alaska, help Nevada, help Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota. This whole Keystone thing could have, actually, if this was in effect, could have had a huge impact. Let me just read real quickly the key section of the Countermand Amendment, because this is so broad that the states legislators are going to have a lot of learning to do and figuring out which ones they want to use first. Section 2 says state legislators in the several states shall have the authority to countermand and rescind any congressional statute, judicial decision, executive order, treaty, government agency, regulatory ruling, or any other government or non-government mandate, including excessive spending and credit imposed on them, but when the opinion of 60% of the state legislators, the law or ruling adversely affects their state's interest. When the countermand threshold has been reached, the law or ruling shall be immediately and automatically nullified and repealed. This Countermand Amendment authority shall also apply to existing laws and rulings. And Senator Dunleavy, there's one word in here that people do have a tendency of gravitating to, and that's called nullified, which in our situation here, this means it shall be immediately and automatically nullified and repealed, meaning it's gone. But if you could kind of touch a little bit about how nullification doesn't work in the settings that Alaska finds itself in and a lot of the other states find themselves in, that whereas this Countermand Amendment would rectify those nullification issues.
Well, I'll do my best, Mike, and if I understand it, I'll do my best here. So nullification, some historians believe is an archaic term that was concept that was going to be used by states, especially prior to the Civil War. There was some talk after, but prior to the Civil War, South Carolina being one of the leaders, that if a law was passed by the federal government that the state itself, the state legislature felt was unconstitutional, that they could nullify it at the state level. There's also another term that's used less often, but actually in some respects, not for this conversation, but for others may be appropriate, and that was interposition, in which that concept was the state would interpose itself between the people of the state and the federal government's overreach. Both of these terms, from a Supreme Court perspective and legal scholar perspective, are two terms that unilaterally used on their own basically aren't going to have any legs. With the Countermand Amendment concept, you embed within the Constitution of the United States legally and lawfully through the process of amending the Constitution that we as states, if we don't agree with law, court action, and especially agency actions, regulations, EPA coming to mind, that we could call upon by triggering the amendment a review of what would be considered inappropriate or onerous laws, regulations, court acts, and through the majority laid out in the amendment, repeal those actions. so that they are void and nullified regarding the states.
Yeah, the example I was talking to a gentleman the other day. He was very much on the nullification and the 10th Amendment task force, and I came up with the example of nullification versus this, in that, let's say the state of Alaska says that, matter of fact, under Alaska state law, we can, any firearms or firearms parts made here in Alaska, as long as they're not sent outside or sold to the lower 48, which then you get the interstate commerce aspect into it. Actually does not have to fall under the under federal gun law restrictions. And that's not something that too many, I don't know of any gun dealerships that want to even touch that one. But let's say that the state of Alaska, for some reason or another, nullified the 1968 Gun Control Act. And I've got a gun shop, and this gentleman comes in, wants to buy a Ruger 30-06. So I sell it to him, and off he goes. Well, because the 68 Gun Control Act has been nullified here in Alaska, then I didn't fill out the federal firearms form, and I didn't do all the other FFL things I was supposed to do because, well, it's nullified. Well, a few hours later, a few days later, here he comes back with his BATF buddies, because he happened to be an undercover ATF agent, and now I'm under arrest for sale or multiple sales of firearms in violation of the Federal Firearms Act and Federal Firearms License in the 1968 Gun Control Act. And my answer to that one is, whoa, wait a minute, Alaska nullified that. We don't have to do that. Senator Dunleavy, do you think the state of Alaska would come to my aid and get me out of federal prison?
Oh, hey, Mike, it's you were cutting in and out, so I'm not sure if I heard everything. I apologize. Repeat the question.
Okay. If the state of Alaska were to nullify the 1968 Gun Control Act, and I, as a gun dealer, sold firearms, and ATF then turns around and arrests me because the 1968 Gun Control Act is still in effect, and we are part of the United States, do you think the state of Alaska would
you'd be on your own, Mike?
Because
yeah, you would be on your own.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, but the beauty of the Countermand Amendment is that if 30 states were to then say, we are going, matter of fact, I have a example of that resolution, of a resolution, whereas the federal government passage of the 1968 Gun Control Act has violated the state's individual Second Amendment right by regulating this enumerated right, whereas the history of enforcement of the 1968 Gun Control Act by the U.S. Attorney General in conjunction with the state and local and state law enforcement has not been enforced consistently, be it resolved that under Article 28 Countermand Amendment, the state of Alaska nullifies and repeals the 1968 Gun Control Act, all changes to the GSEA, and all rules and regulations related thereof. Be it further resolved that other states take up this resolution to protect their citizens' Second Amendment rights, and thus upon the 30-state resolution that the 68 Gun Control Act is hereby repealed. So that one, when I turn around and sell a firearm, and ATF comes in, they can't do anything because it's now repealed. And so that's the protection aspect that the Countermand Amendment brings. And we got a couple more minutes. If you want to kind of talk about that a little bit, and we'll be going to break here at the bottom of the hour. Senator Dunleavy?
I'm sorry, Mike. Can you repeat that? Your guys are cutting out on me here.
Do you want to speak to that for the next couple of minutes? Then we'll go to a break at the bottom of the hour.
Mike, I couldn't hear what you were speaking to because you guys are cutting out. I don't know if you can hear me.
I got you 5 by 5.
Okay, can you repeat? I'm sorry. Can you repeat it? Because again, I'm going to try and I don't know what's going on with this machine here.
Yeah.
Try it again, Mike.
Yeah, just saying if you wanted to talk about the repeal aspect for the next minute before we go to break.
I don't know. I can't hear you.
Okay, we're going to go to break now.
Check out our website at www.cprworldwidemedia.com and our Facebook page at facebook.com/CPRWorldwideMedia.
Why do cities shine so bright? It's the glow of opportunities, of ideas bouncing off one another, of countless people, every one of us, striving to succeed. Right now, in cities everywhere, ideas are being born. New thinking that will put us in awe of what people are capable of. That's what lights cities up. And helping people and their ideas to burn even brighter, so that communities, businesses, and you and I can grow. What if a bank made that its job? For more than 200 years, Citi's job has been to help empower people and business. Now, around the world, it's wherever people gather, wherever ideas come alive. It's wherever you are. The world's city.
The most amazing thing about the Ford Fusion isn't the way it looks. The most amazing thing is the way it sees. With blind spot technology, a lane keeping system, and a standard rear view camera, the Fusion is ready for whatever comes your way. Go prepared. Go further.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you. His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here.
We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
who is the Olympic athlete?
His faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day. The moment you connect, you're no longer in control.
What does this guy want? No claim, no statement.
We're facing a nuclear meltdown.
This is only the beginning.
Black Hat, rated R.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome back to everybody to the Citizens Initiative state legislator roundtable. My name is Mike Coons. I'm the national director for Citizens Initiatives. Sandy Tooth and Kelly Gordon are also on as well. We had the last half hour with Senator Mike Dunleavy from Alaska. Unfortunately, he's having some telephone issues, so he has dropped off. But I do hope that you folks in the lower 48 got a good understanding of what the Countermand Amendment can do and how it's going to pertain to the federal overreach, especially here in Alaska as well as other states. The Sandy Tooth has done a really neat article and presentation. It's called Common Sense. And I think that a lot of people need to understand what that common sense is, and I think she's kind of the what was that name of that gentleman that did the pamphlet Common Sense during the 1700s?
Thomas.
So I'll pass it on. I'll pass that. I'll pass the new Thomas Paine on. So Sandy, go ahead.
I don't think that I'm worthy of a comparison to that exalted gentleman, but in the process of trying to talk to legislators and everything, and then we've got, and it makes Charles angry because COS is the Convention of States, is literally giving away state sovereignty, and they're not concerned about a lot of things. So what I did was I basically wrote a little article called Article 5 in Common Sense for State Legislators. And we all know that the states can use Article 5 to call for an amendment, but it seems daunting, and some of the states are scared of what can happen with a constitutional convention, which we're not doing. And also, all the previous amendments have come out of Congress, and the states have forgotten that they're the ultimate sovereignty, because whether Congress proposes or the states do, the states have to ratify it. So the states have to say, we're the ones, okay? One of the problems in looking at Article 5 is the lack of a specific detail about how to do this, about the procedures. The founders left broad powers in the article, so the states could oppose federal overreach successfully. So we have many Article 5 groups proposing different methods and calling for a convention and different methods for writing the amendments. We need to evaluate the current conditions and the best way for the states to proceed. When the founders wrote the U.S. Constitution, there were only 13 states, not 50. So I don't think they could have imagined how the United States has grown and all the beauty of what we have that has come out of what they did. The founders had one general purpose they followed, and that was to create a unifying federal government while maintaining their state sovereignty. And that's what even made it difficult to get the Constitution ratified. And in fact, here's where we got the Bill of Rights, because the states weren't satisfied with the way the Constitution was, and they wanted some more additions to protect the rights of the people in the states. In fact, the 10th Amendment specifically states that anything that's not enumerated in the Constitution to be a function of the federal government, anything else that's left goes to the states and to the people, any other rights. And these are what they call the unenumerated rights. So today we have a bunch of political factions that cross purposes. And while you think all this great technology we have could be used to rally support, it also brings out all the enemies and opponents. So given the current political climate and all the different things that can be used to try to stop anything that's ongoing, we need to have the states on the same sheet of music for the safest and most rapid way to get an amendment ratified. And the most powerful and general amendment should be the first to blaze the trail. That's just common sense. Let's look at what we actually know from Article 5 from the Founders. Article 4, Section 4 guarantees a Republican form of government, which means an equal vote for each state. Article 5 gives the ultimate sovereignty to the states. And I'm going to repeat, the states have the ultimate sovereignty. Then the 10th Amendment comes in, and it reinforced the limited powers of the federal government. And we all know about what Article 5 says, that you need 2/3 of the states to call for a convention for proposing amendments. And this implies the legislatures providing the amendments. Now listen to it again. The legislatures of 2/3 of the federal states shall call a convention for proposing amendments. See, it's there that the legislatures are the ones that are supposed to bring forth the amendments that go in the Constitution to be ratified. Okay? They're not supposed to abdicate the writing of amendments to delegates. And then, of course, we need 34 states to make the application and 38 states to ratify, which comes from the 2/3 and 3/4 that's in Article 5. Now, let's look at what's happened in our nation. Well, it started 100 years ago, but it's been getting worse and worse as progressives have gained power, and they have used it to gain control of the government and increase the size. Look at what we have now. The Affordable Care Act, Dodd-Frank, EPA regulations, energy policy where the federal government is controlling all this land and all the mineral rights on it, federal land grabs, education. Our rights are always under a battle for the First and Second Amendments. And then we have executive orders that the presidents have gotten more powerful, and they've used these to absolutely push the states down. Common sense indicates we need to get something done quickly. We don't have 5-6 years to wait. We still have 2 more years of an Obama presidency. We have no guarantee that we're going to get a conservative president elected. I would hope we would, but we may not.
And Sandy, if I may interject too, is we don't have a guarantee that we have a Congress right now that fully understands their role, effective role, and they have been at this for so long of denying the states our rights that they continue doing it even though they think they're fighting against President Obama. Go back to you.
Okay. Well, with all these question marks of whether this, Congress that got voted in by the people, Mike is right about that. Look what's happened now with this, budget resolution that got put forward. Instead of starting to fight the immigration issue and just do a short-term continuing resolution, oh no, they did it for another year. So, can we trust them? Probably not. Common sense means we need a powerful amendment to address the current numerous problems. There is nothing out there, and any of the amendments talk about, like, yes, we desperately need a balanced budget amendment, okay? That's fine. But that only takes care of one issue, the federal budget. It doesn't do anything about Obamacare or anything else. So let's look at the various Article 5 citizen groups and what they advocate. Most groups call for a balanced budget amendment as a single issue. Most do not have any way of controlling the convention. And this is what scares so many people. If they don't have any way to control the convention, then we could wind up with a bigger mess than we have now. And then we have one large group that we keep running into that kind of keeps muddying up the waters for us, and that's Convention of States, or COS. And they're calling for a multiple subject application which could cover dozens of amendments, also with no control of the convention. And that really gets scary, because they're talking about limited jurisdiction of the federal government and to fiscally rein it in, and term limits. Well, you keep going on, and this method definitely raises some legal questions. Okay? Now, COS, first of all, in doing these multiple subject applications on Congress, okay, could raise some issues. Will the subject call be considered too vague by Congress? Now, all the other applications by the states that have been done previously, like for the balanced budget amendment, etc., and all that, they have had one individual amendment that they were calling for, the applications, the calls. We have not had a subject amendment, and Congress could challenge it and say, this is too vague. Okay? Besides that, you could have an opposition group challenge COS in court for that same reason. Then, you've had 30 states that have been collaborating on some kind of resolution to control the convention. But conceivably, this could also be legally challenged under Article 1, Section 10, which says no state compacts. Because if the states are joining together and agreeing we're going to use one delegate resolution, then it can be considered a compact. And then, on top of it, here's some more common sense. Let's talk about the issue of ratification. Let's suppose that COS gets its 34 calls for a convention, and they go through a lengthy convention of arguing, trying to get things under control, on and on. And they finally have a number of amendments that they are putting out for ratification, they voted on. Now remember, these amendments will have been written by the delegates, not the states. So, whatever amendment comes out, which is not specified in their subject, they don't even specify, like, we're going to do this amendment or that amendment, you know. So, the states won't know what comes out of it until they vote out and put the amendments up for ratification. And states are going to have to accept them. You know, however, they could look at the amendments and say, well, I don't like this amendment, or I don't like this and this part of this amendment. So after the convention to ratify, you may have some states that ratified out of, say, 8 amendments, some that voted for ABC amendments, some for E, F, and G, some C, D, and E, and some states may ratify all of them or none. And this ratification process could take years. Common sense. With all the time necessary to get 34 calls, have the convention, and ratify the amendments, this process could end in 2021 or 2022 before you actually have some amendments ratified. Lastly, a delegate resolution is needed, passed by the majority of states to control the convention and the delegates. The legally safest way is for the states to each pass their own delegate resolution, not collaborating with other states. So there won't be any compact. Now here's a very big dose of common sense. Our director, Charles, has been working for decades on this Article 5 process, okay? That he's known that an amendment convention has been needed, and he's consulted constitutional scholars. And by the way, people across the country have contributed to writing the Countermand. So this wasn't something that just grew up out of the air. It was a lot of people contributing to it. The Countermand Amendment is so powerful, and it could be used by the states to correct all these present problems I've been talking about, or any future problems. 30 states can countermand and revoke any law, regulation, executive order, court decision, budgets, etc. It gives the states their rightful sovereignty. Common sense. The amendment also provides a criminal penalty, giving the states the power of enforcement. So in other words, if this amendment is not followed, some federal official says, no, I'm not going to do that. If the Attorney General doesn't stop them, then any of the states can take that individual to court, or individuals, and get them prosecuted for up to 5 years in jail. Because that's been one of the problems. Congress has never enforced following the amendments. And all the other amendments were written that way, that Congress shall have the right to make laws to enforce this amendment. Well, they don't. This way, the states can do it. So, that is absolute common sense. Control of the convention is maintained by the majority of states passing our delegate resolution. Now, this provides for each state individually to order their delegates to vote on the Countermand Amendment only. And that's simple. So each state passes the delegate resolution that controls their delegates. There's no compact among the states to be challenged in court. Common sense. There'd only be one amendment for ratification. With the 34 applications for the amendment, it shouldn't take long to get 4 more states on board. All the states will know what the Countermand Amendment says. So, the whole process, of calls, convention, and ratification could be completed in 2016, not 2022. Common sense. And we have provided examples for the states. The big critical thing is we need for them to follow the actual language in the call, not put in constitutional convention. This is an amendment convention. And the delegate resolution is open if each state wants to make some changes in it to make it stronger for their state or whatever. They can do that. It won't matter. as long as we get 26 states passing the Delegate Resolution in one form or another, they will be in control of the convention. So the whole thing can be very orderly. You get your 34 calls, you have your quick amendment convention, the delegate resolutions will allow the convention to be controlled thoroughly. And this powerful amendment can be passed, and now the state's big problem will be determining what they want to countermand first. And then for that, we can have a legislative committee or board across the country, and they can talk about which ones they want to do first. So, do they want to do Obamacare? Do they want to do energy regulations? And this is neat, the big decision. Should they just countermand some energy regulations or EPA regulations, or should they do away with the whole department to countermand the law that created it and get rid of it and tell Congress to start over again and make something that's not going to be so difficult for everyone in the country?
Well, Sandy, it seems that if once we get the countermand through, get a few of these unfunded liabilities, Obamacare, this, that, and the other, the EPA, whatever is costing our states all this extra money, it's going to be a lot easier to balance that budget.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you countermanded the law that created the Department of Education and the EPA, which has grown up like a big fat roach, that really needs to be stomped on, they could cut the budget tremendously just getting rid of a lot of these agencies. Now, with education, if the states decide to do that, then they're going to have to understand they may have to up their own taxes a little bit to cover the funds for educating, but they will have total control over it. If a state wants to mandate that every school has to do a Pledge of Allegiance in the morning, then they can do that. That's up to them for their schools. They can determine the textbooks used and everything else, instead of all these expensive things coming out of Common Core.
Well, and that's what's so wonderful about the United States, is because each of our states is unique. We all have our own way of doing things. Like, you can't get Cajun food up in Alaska. You can't go salmon fishing down. You can't go.
Doesn't taste as good.
Right. You can't go salmon fishing down in Louisiana. Each state is unique, and that is what is so wonderful about the United States.
Yes, it is.
We don't all fit into the same box.
No, and the beauty, but the beauty of this, and you kind of close this out a little bit too, is that because every state is its own individual laboratory, I think is what has been said before. We had two representatives from Delaware on the other day, decidedly blue state. They're running against problems. But the Countermand Amendment, this whole process is so nonpartisan that those the two gentlemen from Delaware, their biggest concern was Common Core. Well, Common Core is reaching across this nation at all state levels equally, both the right and the left, the moderate and the it doesn't really matter. There's a lot, and it's parents that are mad. And the beauty of it is those parents then can go to their state legislatures and say, we need to do something about Common Core, and thus we could have more than 30 states doing a countermand to Common Core. We could have more than 30 states doing a lot of different things that maybe some on the left and some on the right, we actually have a commonality to, like NSA, like Patriot Act, like, there's several that I'm sure that we all have some things. So, Sandy,
we are running out of time.
Out in prayer for us, and we'll close the show tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, I would be happy to. And first, I just want to thank our audience for putting up with all the technical difficulties. If you've hung in through all that, we really love you, and thank you. And just to follow Charles' custom, just a brief prayer before we say goodnight. Dear Lord, thank you for our little victories that have started to come. We've prayed to you and hope to follow your guidance in going forward with this. And we have struggled without money and tried to do what we thought was best for our country. We thank you. We know your hand has been guiding us. And we hope we will have continued guidance as we go forward and protection to all of us and our families and to those of you in our audience. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And thank you everyone for tuning in to the State Legislators Roundtable. We'll see you next Tuesday. Have a great night.